Another special virtual city commission meeting for the city of Ormond Beach. And I'd like to introduce the folks on your screen. I see Rob down there and Dwight's over there, and it's kind of like the Brady Bunch here, but we'll start with Commissioner Dwight Selby from Zone 1.
Good evening.
Good evening. Deputy Mayor and Zone 2 Commissioner Troy Kent. Our Commissioner from Zone 3, Susan Persis. And our Commissioner from Zone 4, Rob Littleton. I'm Bill Partington, Mayor, and then I'd like to introduce staff members who are also on the line or on the Zoom call. City Clerk is with us, Colby Salento. The City Manager, Joyce Shanahan. Assistant City Manager, Claire Whitley. Hi, Claire. Our City Attorney, Randy Hayes, should be with us.
He's there.
Good deal. And Fire Chief, Rusty Sievers. Police Chief, Jesse Godfrey. Let me know if somebody's not there, Colby, because I'm not seeing.
Okay, they're there.
I've seen them previously, but I'm not seeing them right this second. Okay. Planning Director, Stephen Spraker. Our Public Works Director, Sean Finley. And then behind the scenes, assisting with the Zoom platform this evening and our meeting streaming, our Recording Secretary, Cassidy Ritz, Information Technology Director, Ned Huta, and our PIO, Public Information Officer, Jen Elston. So that is the staff, and they are doing a fantastic job under unusual circumstances, but they're keeping us going, and we appreciate that. Next, we will move to the invocation tonight provided by Pastor Joe Pudding with Tomoka Christian Church, and he's going to be on screen with us providing the invocation. There he is.
There we go. All right. Well, Father, in the name of Jesus, I come to you and we ask for divine guidance tonight for our city. We ask for forgiveness for our sin. We know how desperately we need to call on you. And so often we try to do things in our own power. And I pray for the mayor, for the commission. I pray for our city, our county, our country. Lord, we are in your hands and we need your help. We've always needed your help, and forgive us when we thought we could do it. So, Father, I pray your blessing on this meeting with all the decisions. Thank you for the great leaders that we have in this community. May you bless each one of them personally and bless Ormond Beach, Father. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you for all the work. I know I was out to talk with you last week, and you guys are seeing people every single day at your food pantry and serving the community. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mayor.
Next, we will move to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now we move to item 4 on the agenda, 4A. We've got some COVID-19 updates, and this evening we're lucky enough to have our Florida State Representative, Tom Leek, and he is serving also on the Reopen Florida Committee. He's going to give us an update, and I believe we all received information from him earlier today, just kind of some outline information via email. So, Representative Leek, I see you there.
Oh, great.
Thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me. My wife had only 2 requests of me: to make sure I didn't have any food in my teeth, and to make sure the camera angle was such where you couldn't see the mess on her desk at home here. So hopefully I've accomplished those. I want to start by saying how proud I am of the way that our city in our state has reacted to an unprecedented time. The city of Ormond Beach in particular, and Mayor Partington, I'll give you a shout out, having been on the phone with you many times. I think that the way that we have approached this is and particularly in the city, is a way that needed to be approached for this particular issue, and your involvement, both in encouraging and calling the state out where we failed, have been appropriate. So I want to say thank you, and thank you to the City Commission for having me. This has been, I don't really know how to describe it, but it's been an unprecedented experience in my life. I've not seen anything like this or felt anything like this, certainly in elected office, but I think ever. I like to start with what I call COVID by the numbers, and every day when I wake up, I pull out the computer and I start to do the research on what happened overnight, because one of the things that we've learned in this is if your information is an hour old, it's an hour too old. And so I like to start every day with what I call COVID by the numbers. Florida has positive cases in the number of 32,846 at this time, as of the last date when I was prepared this at about 5 p.m. tonight. We have hospitalizations at 5,222, which is roughly 15% of the positive cases require hospitalizations. I find hospitalizations to be a particularly useful number, because that tells us who is able to deal with the virus on their own and who requires medical attention outside of the ordinary. Unfortunately, we've had deaths in Florida at 1,171, which is 0.03% of the positive cases. Now, this has really become a virus of we say a tale of two cities. This is a virus of two tales. And in the state of Florida, we have 3 counties where the bulk of the cases have been detected, and the rest of the state has had a completely different experience. And so I like to look at the number of counties and the case dispersion across them. And right now we have 17 counties with less than a total of 15 cases since the outbreak. So in those counties, and we have 67 counties in the state of Florida, in those counties, they've experienced very little of what the rest of the state has experienced, and certainly nothing like what Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, and Broward County has experienced. Now, contrast that. We have 6 counties, only 6 counties of 67, with more than 1,000 cases, of which we have 1 with more than 10,000 cases, 2 with inclusive of the 1 with more than 4,000, 3 inclusive of the others with more than 2,000, and there are 58 counties with less than 500 cases. So you can kind of see how the virus is impacting our state. We always say, and when we get to Tallahassee, we always say that Florida is really 5 different states, right? You can see how the one state that is South Florida, Southeast Florida in particular, has been impacted. So it's a different virus for different locations. Now in Volusia County, we've got 445 positive cases. So we're falling in that less than 500 cases total. Our hospitalizations are at 79% or 79 or 17%, and our deaths are 18 or 0.04%. Now compare that to fatalities in New York and New Jersey. If you look across the nation, New York and New Jersey have 51% of the fatalities, 51%. Florida, even including the southeast Florida counties, has 1.9% of the fatalities. What we know and what you're able to see objectively, setting aside all of the rhetoric and all of the politics, is the curve, according to the numbers, is in decline. It's particularly in decline in Volusia County. It's in decline in the southeast Florida counties as well. We know that in Florida, currently there are hospital beds available at a rate of 39%. So we're only at it. We've got 39% capacity left. We've never hit 100% capacity anywhere in the state of Florida. We have hospital beds, even in the Miami or the South Florida area, the area impacted the most, are still 40% capacity on average between those 3 counties. Now, tested total, we've been testing, and I really think that the governor has done an excellent job with this. but he has opened up as many testing sites as we possibly could, staying in with the guidelines and with the availability of the testing kits that we have. But even with that testing, we're at 358,000 tests in the state of Florida. The positive testing ratio, and this is really where I think the focus needs to be, but the positive test is only 9%. Now, and that's overall from beginning to end. If you look at what's happening recently, the number of positive tests after social distancing has gone down. And it's been 6%, it dropped to 5, dropped to 4, and then I think it went back up to about 5% as a positive test ratio. So that's a really good ratio. If you look at Florida, we have 150 out of 100,000 people test positive, 150. If you look at the national average, it's 308. If you look at fatalities, Florida has just over 5 fatalities per 100,000. The national ratio is about 17.5 per 100,000. So Florida's looking pretty good from a national perspective. On the Volusia County perspective, I always look at that. We have 86 per 100,000 population test positive. That's that's less than what the state is, which is less than what the national average is. So in particular, Volusia County is doing a good job with it. And on the fatality rate, we have 3.65 per 100,000, which again is even less than what the rest of the state is experiencing, and certainly less than what the nation is experiencing. Now, even in the nation, if you remove from it New York and New Jersey and the kind of 5-borough area up there, all of the numbers change incredibly, right? Because I think the number is still New York has over 50% of the fatalities, and forgive me if I'm wrong about that, but I think that's right. So the concentration of cases within the country is considerable, and the concentration of cases within our state is considerable. So the one thing I think to remember, and my brother highlighted this for me, if you look at the numbers that we have now, we have a 4% fatality rate, which is 4% too many. But as I'm making decisions about my life on a daily basis, I know that I've got a 96% chance if I get it that I recover. That's a pretty good ratio, and I can take some comfort in knowing that 96% of the people who get this recover. Now, add to that the fact that what we're learning through the science of it is that the infectivity or infectiousness of this is much broader than we originally thought, meaning that so many more people have it, but they haven't presented symptoms or they haven't presented to medical care, that the actual ratio of what the fatality or lethality of the virus is much lower than what we have originally forecast here. So I think some of the things to take comfort in is, there's not been a single instance in the state of Florida where someone has been denied a hospital bed. Not a single instance where someone has been denied a ventilator. In fact, we have 6,500 ventilators in the state of Florida sitting around collecting dust right now because they haven't been needed. And we just never got to that surge point that was predicted. No one in the state of Florida, and actually no one in the country, has been denied treatment who sought it. No one. So I think those are important things to remember as we get our hands around what it means. And I'm excited to learn a year from now what the story of this is. I mean, when history looks back on this, what do we think happened? How do we view what happened in 2020, both with regard to the medical preparedness and the actual impact of the virus, and then the economic impact of the virus. I want to see how that story is written in a year. What we know now is that our testing facilities have exceeded the current demand, right? That doesn't mean that we're testing everyone in the state, but it means that the stations that we have set up, and we have them, Florida now I think is second or third in the country in the number of tests given. We know that the testing stations that we have out there are exceeding the demand that's out there. And the governor, he gave an example the other day I thought was illustrative. Even in South Florida, on day one when we opened up a drive-through testing area, they had 750 people and they started to hit capacity. But the very next day, that number fell to 600. And then it fell to 500. And then it fell to 400, about 450 is where it's leveled off of people coming in to get tests. And so what we're seeing is those people who want tests and are eligible, right? So we've expanded eligibility as well. But those people who want tests and are eligible are able to get them. Now, we're going to have to make tests more readily available for the general populace. And one of the things that's been important to the Florida House for sure, and Speaker Oliva and the governor has just acted on, is he said that that you can go to a pharmacist, and pharmacists are now authorized to give tests. Well, if you think of what that does for the availability of tests and the availability of the average person to come in and get tested, it's significant. So if we have capacity over here that's not being used and we can focus it in those areas, we can start to get a better picture of the infectivity, infectiousness of this particular virus. Now, the reason I think I'm here is probably because the governor asked me to serve on his task force for reopening Florida. And I would be lying if I said I had any particular secret knowledge or insight on that, but I do know that it's going to come tomorrow, that he's going to make an announcement tomorrow. And I can just give you some predictions based on the tenor of the conversations that we had within the task force and my reading the tea leaves from watching the governor speak and both talking to him and talking to his staff. So the governor said today that he's going to make an announcement tomorrow on the reopening of Florida. That's important because on Thursday, the safer at home order expires. And without any renewal of that order or change of that order or new order, then everything goes back to just open for business the way it was. I don't expect the governor to do that. In my conversations with the governor and with the governor's staff and on the task force, he is very data driven. And many of you, since he was our congressman, got to work with him, you know that about him, right? He's a very careful guy. He's a studious guy. One of my favorite stories from this week is the governor appeared in Orlando. He flew back up to Tallahassee and he got back, I think it was about 2 p.m. And from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., all he did was review task force recommendations himself in his office, going through them by himself. That's the type of studious guy he is. So I'm confident that he's going to be data driven. I'm also confident that he's going to be cautious. And what I expect is a very phased in reopening of the state of Florida with risk assessments along the way. So if we get to 7 days or 14 days, and if you go to the federal criteria, which has some gating criteria, Florida as a state already meets that gating criteria, to get through phase 1. So we could advance to phase 2. That would be perfectly within the guidelines that we've got. I don't know this, but I would expect that he takes a more measured approach with that. And it's a pretty modest opening at the beginning. We'll get folks. I know he's a huge fan of getting people outdoors. So I would expect to see, outdoor parks and beaches open, respecting social distance, but open back for business and getting people outside exercising. Those restrictions, I think, will last so long as are medically necessary, right? And I don't get the feeling from this governor that he's going to rush anything or he's going to do anything imprudent. I think he's going to look at the data. He's going to talk to his medical folks, and he's got an entire Department of Health that he relies upon for the medical side of it. But he's going to take what the task force did, was solely focused on the economic aspect of it, and then he's going to lay over top of that what the medical folks are telling him, and he's going to do what's important to get us back open. I do expect we'll hear something positive about reopening tomorrow. I expect that we'll have what I would anticipate would be 14-day. 7 to 14 day timelines to see how the reopening is going. And I think the first phase 1, because we've essentially already been there for a couple of weeks, we may have an abbreviated timeline to get to phase 2, but we may not. But after that, I think we'll have 14 to 30 day timelines to see if it's working. That's kind of what I know about the reopening and where we are. I do want to address one more thing if I have the leeway to do so. And that's, that's the unemployment fiasco that we've got, and it is, it has been terrible, and I don't pretend to have anything that can comfort the people who aren't getting payments that should be getting them. When I look at it and I try to figure out what happened, I kind of look at the pre-surge and the post-surge, and you'll recall that we had a surge of unemployment claims like this state has never seen before, where the state has already processed today some factor, function of how many cases they typically process in a year. So if you look at pre-surge, and I wonder, and I ask myself, why didn't we know about this? Why didn't we understand there was a problem? And pre-surge, well, there were design flaws within the Connect system that were masked by a low demand. we had the lowest unemployment rate we've had. And because there was so little, volume moving through, the design flaws were masked. You just didn't see them. And I can tell you, for me, having this now being my fourth year in the legislature, prior to this, I never had a single complaint about the unemployment comp system, never. Now, go to post-surge, right? The surge happens. We try to push more volume through a system than has ever been pushed before on any system. We know that other states like New York and New Jersey are all struggling with their unemployment comp systems too. And it's because of volume, right? The system was never designed to handle that kind of volume. But the design flaws were completely unmasked and caused by the unprecedented design. So you've got to, we've got to look back at it now and figure out how we're going to fix that. I don't know how you anticipate that kind of demand, because it's never happened in the history of the state of Florida. I do know that what the governor has done, I think, is appropriate. He's taken 2,200 additional state employees, taking them off their normal duties and added them to unemployment comp to help them deal with the number of claims coming through. What he's added systems to it to connect, whether it's PEGA or the paper system. We've had 1.9 million claims. We've processed 652,000 of them. We've paid 387,000 claims, to the tune of $500 million today, and we're still behind, right? So we've still got to catch up. That's just going to take time. I know that time is of the essence, that people need their money. It's going to be necessary for them to survive. My capacity is limited what I can do, but I've done what I can. And I've taken my staff and dedicated them 100% to helping people with unemployment claims. We get, constituents contacting us daily in droves. And I've got 2 people doing the best that they can to try to help them navigate the system so that they can get the claims and get their claims processed appropriately. That's where we are from a state perspective. If commissioners, you have any questions for me, I'm happy to try to answer them. I'll do the best that I can with the information I've got, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Tom. And I know you have been there every step of the way. We appreciate your leadership. If you weren't a strong leader, the governor wouldn't have appointed you to the reopening task force. So as we pivot towards that and start to look forward towards that and implement that, I appreciate your service. And everything we've needed, we've called you and you've gotten it for us as quickly as could possibly be expected. So thank you for that. And I saw Deputy Mayor Kent had a question, so we'll start with him.
Thank you, Mayor, and Representative Leake. Thank you for being here. I don't have a question. It's just a couple of comments for you. And I wanted to thank you. That was the most thorough explanation of what's going on in the state of Florida. And when you hear that the government closest to the people is the most important, I felt like the information you just shared was relevant. It was current. And I so appreciate you being here tonight to share that news with this commission. I had no idea your staff members were working in the capacity that they are right now with unemployment. And I'm pleased to hear that, because those are the kinds of things I've heard from my constituents, is that they can't get through on the unemployment line, that they keep getting kicked off, and it's problematic for them. So I now have another avenue or phone number for them to use to try to get some help. So I'm glad you shared that. But really, it was just comments I had just to thank you for sharing all of the information that you did. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Persis.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I just wanted to thank you also, Representative Leake, for all the information you gave us. It was exceptionally given out in a nice, clear manner so that we understand everything. I have gotten also some calls from my, people in my district about the unemployment. And I'm so happy to hear that you all are working on that, because we have so many people in our zones right here in Ormond Beach that need food, they need help, they need childcare and so forth. And those are the kind of things I'm kind of worrying about right now. So just wanted to thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Anyone else? Commissioner Selby.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Representative Leak. Always a pleasure. That was a very informative presentation that you made for that. I'm curious with the difference statewide in concentrations of cases and hospitalizations and so forth. Do you think how's the governor going to deal with that? Is he going to treat the state, all counties in the state the same way, or is he going to do you think he'll set this up in such a way that those counties that are least affected can move further faster, and those that are somewhere in the middle, do something different from the southwest or southeast portion of the state where where they're having the biggest challenges?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. The truth is I don't know because he hasn't told me for sure, and he hasn't declared one way or another. If I'm reading the tea leaves based on my conversations with him, with his staff, and what I've seen him say on press conferences, I think that he will absolutely treat the state as unique pods. There's in the middle of the Panhandle, you got a little problem out west, but in the middle of the Panhandle, there's very little going on as far as positive cases. You start to get over to Jacksonville, you have a little bit more. You actually get to Northeast Florida, and we're doing pretty well. Central Florida West is also doing pretty well. So I think he's going to treat them as different regions. And I heard him say it the other day, but it's something that you hear as soon as you get in the legislature. The state of Florida is really 5 different states, right? And what's the old joke? If you want to go south in Florida or get more southern in Florida, you go north, right? So I really think it's a little bit different. I think he's going to treat Southeast Florida different than he treats Northeast Florida. And he said as much. I mean, he said, I don't know that we can do the same things in Southeast Florida that we can do other places. The other thing, he kind of carved out a couple of different, businesses or industries for distinction as well. He said, I don't know that we get to a point right now where we can have live events again. Yeah. That makes sense. We probably can't do that. You could run cars on a track without a crowd, but can you have a live event? Probably not. He also indicated that while it may be okay to have restaurants with social distancing and minimum capacity or maximum capacity loads, he doesn't think that the bars are ready to open yet. So I think we're going to see some both geographic distinctions. I think we're going to see some industry distinctions, and I think we're going to see some individual distinctions. So when it comes to our citizens who are in the high risk categories or over the age of 65, they have some kind of pre-existing condition. I think the advice is going to be stay home a while longer until we know how this works out. But if you are outside of one of those high risk conditions, I think you're going to get more freedom to go and do the things that you have done previously.
And Mayor, if you will, a follow-up question.
Yes, please.
So it relates to the nursing homes. Obviously you're aware of the Opus situation here in Ormond, and maybe you just comment on health facilities like that in general. Sort of what have you learned? And I mean,
yeah,
to me, it's not surprising that there's that we're having the situation that we're having in nursing homes, because you have the sickest, oldest people, concentrated. But actually, I did just a few minutes ago hear the Secretary of Defense, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, speaking about the VA and what appeared to me to be incredibly low infection rate of veterans in the United States, and even with the aging population. I think he said the vast majority of veterans are in excess of age 65. So, but anyway, comment on nursing and long-term healthcare facilities.
Yeah, I tend to agree with the governor that there is a density factor here. Whether you look at cities like Chicago or New York, or you look at places like nursing homes, I think it's both a density factor on a macro and a micro level. And in this particular instance, I think that if you look at Volusia County in particular, and you were to remove the cases from nursing homes and from Tomoka Correctional, our numbers are very, very favorable to us, because the cases are confined, and I don't remember the percentages now, but there was a large percentage of our cases come from either a nursing home or a correctional institute. What you can glean from that is that, and I had this conversation with our local Department of Health, Mayor Partington was with us, and the State Department of Health, and they're very careful about what they say. Okay, and maybe I'm less careful, but what you can glean from what they were saying is, and I asked the question directly: are you seeing the community spread that we all kind of feared? And if you remove nursing homes and you remove the Department of Corrections, you really don't. And one of the things I found kind of fascinating about our talk with the Department of Health is, you ask questions like, well, when was the peak and when was the surge? And in Volusia County, that question is difficult to answer because we had a little spike at the beginning, and then it largely has been level. Now you will see some numbers on days when the Department of Corrections released all of its positive test results in the same day, or when the testing facilities turn around and release a bunch of results in the same day. You'll see some spikes, but if you look at the trend, it's relatively flat and has remained relatively flat and at a relatively low level. So for Volusia County, I think that bodes well for whether we can move more quickly to get up and running than Miami-Dade.
Right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And anybody else? Representative Leak, I really appreciate your time, and I know you've been busy, and this has taken it's been an unusual, unprecedented, historic event. And like you said, I'm looking forward to in a year seeing kind of how the aftermath is written up. It should be interesting for sure.
It should be. Well, thank you all very much, and I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot. All right, now we'll move on to 4B, turning back to Ormond Beach issues and get the COVID-19 update, starting with, it looks like, Fire Chief Rusty Cedars. There he is.
How you doing? Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
sir.
Just going to give you a quick update. Obviously, I'm here in the Emergency Operations Center. It's still going on. We're still in operation. We're still monitoring, and we anticipate this to continue through the end of May, actually. Again, once everything opens up, we still want to keep tracking and see if that really makes a difference here in Volusia County. Currently, we're keeping up with our demands on supplies citywide, such as sanitizer, wipes, disinfectant, things like that we clean our vehicles with and our facilities. And also keeping an increased stock of our PPE. So we're keeping up with that, and we're also placing orders for the future. As far as COVID-19 related incidents, since March 16th, so we've been here now tracking this for we're in our 7th week. We've had 160 calls for service that was flagged by dispatch as reporting one or more COVID-19 symptoms. And again, that's so fire rescue personnel and police officers can take the precautions that we need when we're responding. Currently, as you know, we're tracking 81 confirmed cases in Ormond Beach. And again, that's anyone with an Ormond Beach address. Looking at our hospital index, again, as we just heard, again, our capacity at Advent Daytona Beach is 36% as of today, and Halifax is 39% our capacity, which is very good. Again, we've been keeping that steady moving forward. As far as the fire department, fire rescue is going to continue to review our safety of our staff, and again, of course, our public. We've had an experience of increase of COVID-19 patients, as you were very well aware of, at one of our long-term care facilities. Now, the Department of Health did remove 16 patients to area hospitals to eliminate the spread. And again, the health department then set up a plan they put in place. They set a task force out to isolate those residents in order to stop that spread. So fortunately for this week now, we've had no increase in that facility. Crews are also following those safety precautions, again, when we're responding to any assisted living facilities. And we're going to continue monitoring those facilities. The EOC is in contact with all assisted living facilities here in Ormond Beach. Again, we're tracking any COVID-19 patients that they might exist. We're reviewing our staff plan moving forward in anticipation of businesses opening, see what that's going to do. But currently, we have no employees at Fire Rescue that are being monitored or tested positive for COVID-19. So that's a godsend. And again, I'd just like to say, if I could real quick, I'd like to thank the city manager for her leadership during this crisis. I'd like to thank the mayor and commission for all your support. And again, you're caring for all of your city employees. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief. You're on the front lines with your team every day, and we appreciate all the hard work you guys are putting in. I mean, to go into these hotspots where the COVID-19 is kind of in an intensified area, and use the proper PPE, use the proper protocol, and make sure you stay safe and all our people stay safe. It can be daunting, but you guys have done an amazing job under difficult circumstances, and so we really appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much. I'll let the crews know.
Wonderful, thank you. And next we will have Chief Godfrey.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners.
Good evening. Good evening.
I hope this update finds you and your families doing well. Updates from the police department really haven't changed much from the last meeting. We continue to take measures to increase safety of our staff and public and limit the spread of the virus. Just like the fire department, currently no employee at the police department has tested positive for the coronavirus. However, we continue to monitor high-risk interactions and conduct testing as needed. Our staffing is the same as the last meeting. We've redeployed our traffic officers and our outreach officers on patrol shifts for more coverage. And we've also maintained our staffing to avoid cross-contamination. And these modifications will likely continue for an extended period to ensure critical services are not compromised. Working from home, we have a number of administrative employees that continue to work remotely, and that's working out very well. Calls for service. Officers are handling calls by telephone as much as possible before responding to limit the risk of exposure. Calls for service are generally down as most of the citizenry have complied with the stay-at-home order. The only uptick would be our domestic violence cases. Again, I would ask the public and to, if you see something, say something. It's very important right now. And as far as compliance with the governor's order, all the reported cases are being handled through our neighborhood improvement division, and to date, all are in compliance. Our supplies and equipment, the city EOC, the fire department, they do a fabulous job. They continue to disperse the needed PPE and disinfecting supplies. At this time, we're adequately equipped with PPE. Officers are also utilizing increased PPE protocols on calls for service and will continue to maintain higher standards for an extended period of time to avoid possible exposure. And I said it before, but I'm very proud of the men and women of this department for facing the challenges before them. I want them to also thank I want to also thank the spouses and the family members that support them on a daily basis. It means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to you. And I've heard your comments, and I've passed them along. So I do appreciate the support from you, Mayor, and the Commission, and the City Manager, and the city staff. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And everything I said to Chief Sievers applies to your men and women and you as well. And Deputy Mayor Kent, I'm sorry I missed you at the end of Chief Sievers.
That's okay. And I'm sure Chief Stevers is probably listening. And I have the same question for him that I have for Chief Godfrey. And that is, well, first of all, thank you both for the job you're doing. And it sounds like you have everything you need. Just wanted to ask, is there anything that your department needs that you don't have to help keep our men and women better prepared, more successful as they're dealing with this COVID?
Speaking for my department, we have everything we need. I really appreciated Representative Leake's information. That was great. I really think that the more time that goes by and the flatter we flatten the curve, I think we're going to come out of this okay. So thank you for asking, sir.
Perfect.
Great. And Chief Sievers, I think you're still there.
Yep, we're trying to get him back. There you go.
Yes.
Perfect. You
Yes,
heard.
thank you. No, we currently have everything, all the supplies we need. Obviously, at the beginning, that was one of our concerns. We were all trying to get basically the same supplies worldwide. So that was one of our main concerns with the N95 mask and those kinds of things, especially the PPE. But no, we've done pretty well. We've secured enough that we can get through this crisis. And I think the supply chain is opening it up, and hopefully again in the summer it will. No, we're good. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. And next we will move to an update from City Manager Joyce Shanahan. Joyce, you got to unmute yourself.
Let's see, how's that?
Perfect, perfect.
Good. Thank you very much for hearing from the police and fire chief. They are on the front lines as well with the rest of their personnel. We have been staggering shifts and we will continue to do so for the next couple of weeks just to ensure there's no cross contamination. We've had probably up to 10, maybe 12 total employees tested for the virus. All have come back negative. Some have been exposed or thought they had exposure through work or family individuals. And so we're grateful that they have all been negative. We are awaiting the governor's news on the plan for reopening. We are coordinating with our sister cities and Volusia County about reopening. We want to be consistent with other communities so there's less confusion and less problems with not having the same standards. So we're working to do that. We're also working with the Chamber of Commerce and Main Street to find out what what the business community needs in order to get back to work. There's likely going to be standards for PPE. Do they have a supply chain to handle that? There's likely going to be standards for cleaning and sanitization. So we're working with them on that, trying to identify what they need and help them develop their own personal plan for their businesses. And Debbie Cotton and Julia have been immeasurably helpful in that regard. We're also working on developing a economic assistance plan of some sort in concert with the county. The county received $92 million from the CARES Act funding. Cities less than 500,000 did not receive any direct funding as a result of that. But the county is looking to do some sort of business assistance plan that may involve if you have to make some structural changes to your business, whether it's installing plexiglass or doing something with distancing for your workers or your clientele. Also helping them locate PPE and maybe helping them with those purchases. The CARES Act funding cannot be used for any lost revenue. It must be used directly for COVID-19 expenses. We also have, we're also working on a CRA grant fund that we hope to bring to you. Currently, we had facade improvement grants, but very few people are doing those. But if there's some changes likewise that they need to do to their business to make it safer for their interaction with the public, we'll work with them on doing that, but we'll bring that to you first. That's about all I had as far as the COVID-19 update is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Any questions for Joyce at this time? Joyce, I appreciate the work you've done with the nursing homes. I don't know if everybody realized in a prior life you were involved in nursing home administration, but you understand how those facilities operate. And so I think that knowledge has served us well. When you look at, you know, they show in the paper the Ormond Beach number being 80 or 81, and you look at one facility having almost 50 positives between the residents and the staff. And then with the other two facilities having some, that would probably take us at least to like 55. And so Ormond Beach's true number would be somewhere around 26, minus the people who live in county areas of those zip codes. And so our number would really indicate that there's not a lot of community spread. And I think when you look at 32174 and 32176 combined, you're looking at almost the top quarter of Volusia County. It's a huge area, and I'm not aware of any other combination of zip codes that covers that much land area. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you for your work with the Department of Health, getting that strike team to the nursing home and trying to get those folks the help that they needed. So although each of those people may not be from Ormond Beach, they're in Ormond Beach and their families are certainly concerned about them. And we hate to see them have any issues. And I think we've helped as much as we possibly can. I know the fire chief and his people are there every day and staying on top of those situations. So I don't know if that was more of a comment or a question, but Feel free to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do want to say that from the very outset, Fire has been proactively visiting those nursing homes in Ormond Beach. We started to notice something happening at one of those facilities. You were gracious enough, and Representative Leek were gracious enough to take a phone call 2 weeks ago. We had about an hour-long discussion with the Department of Health, trying to determine how we can be proactive in getting out there. The real issue is, up until just actually 2 days ago, the state was not releasing that nursing home data on a granular level. We knew that they were in Volusia County, but we didn't know where they were. The chief knew where they were because he ran the calls there. So I think with your input and that of Representative Leek, and with the Department of Health and the fire department, we were able to kind of get them to mobilize that strike force. So we're grateful for that. And I think things have calmed down there a little bit. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Very good. Anything else? Deputy Mayor Kent.
Yeah, and it's not for Ms. Shanahan. It's really for you, Mr. Mayor. I'm appreciative that you just shared those numbers the way you did about the positive cases in Ormond Beach, especially at the nursing home, because I, for one, have had constituents reach out to me and say, what's going on? Why is Ormond so high? And if there's a way, I don't know that, you know, that we can, but if there's a way to get that information out to our Ormond Beach residents and constituent base, I think it's extremely refreshing to hear that we're not, you know, when you look at it that way, really, we're not the leader in Volusia County with this, and our social distancing guidelines are working. Our residents are taking this seriously, and I just thought that was pretty powerful. You know, I hadn't heard it until right now, and when the meeting's over, I already know there's one constituent that I'm picking up the phone and giving her a call because she asked me specifically about this.
I appreciate that, Deputy Mayor. And that was one of the topics with the Department of Health and Representative Leek, how misleading the zip code method is. And then when you don't allow, which they used to not do, the governor released that restriction, but they used to not say what home a particular outbreak may have occurred in. And so it just leads to really misinformation and makes it harder for people to understand what's going on. And I think there's been a call for more information, more transparency, and certainly you have to be understanding of the HIPAA rules. I get that, but there are things they can do to make it more clear for all of us so we don't necessarily have to worry as much. And I think that, you know, the end result of that conversation, I think Representative Leek gets it. The Department of Health understands, but they feel like they're hamstrung with some of their rules. But I'm hoping maybe there'll be some legislation next session that fixes some of that. So we'll keep working on it. Commissioner Persis, or Deputy Mayor.
I was just going to just end with that and say, yeah, absolutely. Because I know my wife and I, you know, we go to our favorite place to shop, which we try to get there once every 10 days, which you all know is Aldi. And, you know, they're letting 50 people in the store at a time. And, you know, you've got to wait outside until they reach that number. And I think for our residents, I mean, I know you all have seen it when you've been out and about. People aren't out. They're not on our roads. It's not like what you've seen before. And I think that information, Mayor, is important for our residents to know what they're doing is working. And unfortunately, the information that we were given per, you know, by zip code, which, you know, a lot of people don't realize. They hear Ormond Beach and they don't think about Ormond by the Sea. They don't think about, you know, Bunnell with that zip code. And it's important to make sure the information is good information. And this is some of the better information, because really it is good news for Ormond Beach, but it's good information. It's more accurate information, and that's powerful. Sorry, Commissioner Persis.
Commissioner Persis.
Yes, I just wanted to add on to that, just the fact that our first responders have no no hint of any virus, and they are right there on the front lines, shows, we are really doing such a fabulous job right here in Ormond Beach. And that's just fabulous news. And I agree with Deputy Mayor Kent that we need to get that out to the people that, everyone's been doing all the right things. And the numbers really need to really see the numbers the way you explained them, Mayor, because that was very, very clear.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both. Anyone else before we move to the consent agenda? All right. The consent agenda is very short. I think it's just one item, and let's see. Colby, did we receive any comments on the consent agenda? No.
We did not.
Okay, good deal. Then I just need a motion in a second.
Mayor, I'd like to move the consent agenda, item 5.
I'll second.
Great. Moved by Commissioner Selby, seconded by Deputy Mayor Kent. And unless there's any discussion, Colby, please call the vote.
Commissioner Selby,
Yes.
Commissioner Kent,
Yes.
Commissioner Persis,
Yes.
Commissioner Littleton,
Yes.
Mayor Partington.
Yes, and now would be the time if anyone wants to comment on the single item consent agenda. Nope, good deal. We're in good shape. We will move now to 6A, discussion items, and this is the Volusia County Schools letter of support item. Did we, Colby, receive any kind of comment on this
No,
one?
we did not.
I thought we might, but I wasn't sure.
No.
You have all received the materials. Does anyone want to start off? All right, I saw Commissioner Persis first, and then we'll go to Deputy Mayor Kent.
Okay, yes, this is a very exciting project, in my opinion, being, I was born and raised here, and I actually went to Ortona Elementary when I was a little girl. But I think to have a K-8 in Ormond Beach at the Osceola site would be just a great thing for our city. I think it would help increase our property values. I think people would be moving in to the beach side more and maybe redoing some homes because they might want to be close to the school. The K-8 school that I know has been visited is state-of-the-art new school with technology, and that's what this school would be. And to have it right here in our backyard, I think right here would just be fabulous for our city. So I am in favor of it. I just want to throw that out there right now.
Appreciate that. Deputy Mayor Kent.
Thank you. Yeah, I echo what Commissioner Persis is saying. I had an opportunity last week to speak with board member Carl Persis about this project. In addition to that, this is zone 2. This is 4 streets away from my home. My mother was the first graduating class out of Osceola Elementary. My 5 brothers and sisters, including this guy, went there. I was the president of Osceola Elementary. It's near and dear to my heart. And today I did pick up the phone and I spoke to board member Cuthbert because she had said publicly that she's the only one I heard publicly that favored the Ortona site. And I let her know how important the site was to me at Osceola, that it's important to the constituents that I have in Ormond Beach, and that we would be discussing it tonight. I knew they had a board meeting today earlier, I think around 3 p.m. and our meeting was now, and that there were some things that possibly, if the commission agreed, we would be in support of having a school at the Osceola Elementary site. And she liked hearing that. She said that as soon as we can let the board know how we feel about this, it's important to her. And I appreciated my conversation with her, as I also appreciated my conversation with board member Persis. I'll just tell the rest of the commission because I haven't heard anybody else speak about it. But Osceola is a special place, and it's a great location to keep a school. If it's elementary or if it's K-8, it's a great location to have a school. And the city, I reminded Ms. Cuthbert today that the city has been a great partner with Volusia County Schools, with Ormond Elementary and the parking that we have, with Osceola and the recreation, with Ormond Beach Middle School and the recreation, and tie that in with Pop Warner football and Pride. We really are we have a great partnership with each other. And I'm in favor of us letting the school board know that we're willing to work with them to make sure Osceola Elementary is the location for the school.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else? Commissioner Selby? Yep.
Well, I was going to let Rob go ahead of me if he has any comments. You have any comments, Rob?
Sure. I did want to say I'm happy city staff works so well with Volusia County School Board. I'm happy the city is partnering or going to partner with the Volusia County School Board in keeping Osceola where it is. It's going to benefits that whole community. It's going to be good for our new park that we're going to be redoing over there. I'm happy to work with them.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Littleton. Commissioner Selby.
Thank you, Mayor. So I had a few questions, and maybe this might be either for you all on the commission or maybe for city manager. But the first one was we have some recreation elements on the Osceola site, from what I understand. And what's your understanding of what happens to those recreation elements if they went with the K8 plan?
I would give that to either Joyce or Stephen, if they even know at this point, being so early in the planning stages.
It is early in the planning stages, and I'll let Stephen respond.
Good evening. The school board has said there is not enough room in order to keep all that recreation facility that you have there today. They are attempting to create areas where they have a ball field and a basketball, but it will be reduced from what it is today. They simply need a land area for the buildings and the stormwater. So it would be reduced somewhat.
Okay, and are those elements city owned now, or is the entire site owned by the school board? And then we put is it tennis courts or basketball, or what do we have park and rec facilities there on a school board site? What's the relationship?
It is owned by the Volusia County School Board, and there's an interlocal agreement that allowed the recreation improvements that exist today. Okay, good. And then there was a question about the height.
Apparently they want a 3-story building, which exceeds the 35 feet. I didn't hear anybody talk about that. Does anybody have any concern about that? I don't have any concern about it, but it's not, it's in your zone there, Troy. You don't envision any concern about that?
I don't. And the way that the school is set now, I talked about that with board member Cuthbert today. Immediately to the west of the school, you have Hillside Cemetery, where my grandmother, God rest her soul, and my parents will be laid eternally at rest there as well. You have Hillside Cemetery. And then the way the school is set up, when you go around Bizarvey Circle and Lucky Drive, and even on Seminole, there's very few homes that have frontage where I think it would negatively affect anybody. I really don't think it would. So I'm okay with the variation they're going to need in height there. And also, Commissioner Selby, just to kind of follow up on the recreation piece, just so you're aware. So yeah, there's 2 tennis courts there. There's 4 racquetball courts. There's 2 baseball fields that are out there. There's a playground, and there's an outdoor basketball court. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, one of my first concerns before I saw the site plan, but just in beginning to read the write-up, was the traffic pattern, because right now traffic backs up pretty bad, especially in the afternoons at the pickup time. But with the new plan, where the entrances for the public entrances off of the south, I don't know the name of that street right offhand, but that, and there's plenty of queue line in the parking lot. I believe that will dramatically improve that pickup situation. And then there was, we got an email, I think today, from staff regarding the stormwater. Looked like it was sort of an update, and I read through it, but honestly, could somebody just give me the nickel tour of what that memo said?
Stephen?
Or Sean.
So I'll take a shot at it. So we had the opportunity to discuss with the school board the potential of moving the pipe. And they basically came up with a new scenario, trying to connect the buildings so that pipe would not be an obstacle. There was also discussion of a regional approach focusing on water quality. So basically trying to improve the water quality going down to the river through both, through Willis and through the other street. So there was a regional approach. We also talked with St. John's and the school board, and basically trying to set the parameters of how the site would be redeveloped to try to show that this site can be redeveloped and the stormwater would work on the property.
Okay. All right, great. Well, and then my final comment is, look, as I read through this, obviously I would prefer to have the building, the school in Ormond Beach, no question about that. So I favor Osceola. I had mixed opinion, and I really wanted to hear from you educators about whether or not a middle school was appropriate, on that site, because it seemed like a lot of density on a pretty small site. And it sounds like you're both in agreement that a K through 8 plan, although I guess we would take a K5 also if that's what the school board, decided to do. The last comment I wanted to make was that you all have heard me say a couple of times that there are 2 bridges in Volusia and East Volusia County that don't exist that should. One is Bevel Road. I-4, Route 400, Bevel Road ends basically at US 1. And that bridge really ought to exist. If there ever was one bridge that really should exist, if you just think of it from a macro perspective, it's that bridge. The second one that more recently is obvious that it should exist is LPGA. And the reason for that is because of all the density and development at LPGA and I-95. Of course, the challenge there is going through Holly Hill and then across the river, and where does it land? And interestingly enough, if you look at an aerial map, the Ortona site is a perfect place to have that bridge land. Okay, so I'm just throwing this out there. This is a kind of a mind-blowing sort of thing, especially because Aaron Delgado's house is directly underneath where the bridge would fly over to Ortona. So, but Lisa Kennedy's not. So it's a good thing. Anyway, so I just put that out there because when I read through the report, they look very comparable to me. In fact, really, I try to say objectively that I think, just looking at it objectively, Ortona might have a little bit of an edge. But I think for a whole bunch of other reasons, Osceola is the place that they ought to do it, that they ought to build this school. And so then the additional benefit is that the old school site of Ortona could someday be that landing place for the bridge that really needs to get built across the intercoastal at LPGA. And then a final thought is that I thought about this on the way here, that this is kind of a win-win for Ormond Beach, because if they should choose Ortona, I assume then the school board will declare this a surplus site. And I would hope that we would be the first one to the table to buy it and turn it into a recreational element for the beachside residents, or for all the residents of Ormond, but especially for the beachside. But my first choice obviously is to have a school.
Thank you, Commissioner Selby and Commission. All good points, all good thoughts. The property values, I think, would see a increase. It's just well known that good quality schools are good for a city. And so a K-8 or an elementary at this location would be perfect. To me, when you look from Ponce Inlet all the way, to the farthest north homes in Ormond by the Sea, it's really, it could be Ortona or it could be Osceola. They're within a couple miles of each other. So they're both kind of equidistant, but only 200 families go to Ortona, 400 families go to Osceola. So why not disrupt and disturb the least amount of people, if at all possible? And so keeping it in Ormond Beach, I think, makes the most sense. As far as the height limit goes, the school board isn't required to comply with our height limit, but they are supposed to be sensitive to and take into consideration the norms in the community. And I feel comfortable that they would do that. If you go to Audubon Park School, just Google that. It's the Orange County Public School System, and look at the K-8 that they've put in that area. And if you talk to that principal, they have so many students wanting to get in there, they're having to turn people away. It's been so very popular. It's created some renewal in the community, so the property values are rising, and it's been a very, very positive thing for their area. So something like that in Ormond Beach would be perfect. And when you look at those pictures of the Audubon Park School, it doesn't look any more obtrusive than any other school, whether it's Seabreeze or Ormond Middle. Even though it's 3 stories, it still has a nice professional look to it, and I think it would fit in that area. So I think Deputy Mayor Kent mentioned what a great community partner Ormond Beach has been. We had the Teacher of the Quarter program, and we just partnered with the Garden Club to create a learning center essentially at Vadner Park, which is right there by the school, that would continue to be utilized. So I think it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. And so I'm supportive. Joyce, do you need a vote, or Randy, or just, is that good enough direction? I think the comments were all very positive. You got to unmute yourself there, Joyce.
You're muted, Joyce.
They automatically mute me and I keep forgetting. I think they want to automatically mute me all the time. We're just sending a letter of support that was in the packet. At some future date, if that school is selected and there's improvements to be made, we would come back to you with the plan for that.
Perfect. Thank you. Very good. And now we move on for reports, suggestions, and requests. And there's 2 items I want to hear from the commission on when we get to each of the commission members. The first, I think timing is everything, and Avalon Group is talking about doing an Avalon project in Daytona Beach. And I'm calling now, based on recent events, for a workshop. And I think at least one other commissioner, Commissioner Selby, is going to agree with that. Basically, the 2 events that spurred me to realize that now is the time. First, Daytona Beach, during a pandemic, during an emergency crisis time, changed their rules regarding development. And I found that very disturbing and very disappointing. They made it less transparent at a time when you want more transparency. And so that was the first item. The second item was the article in the News Journal that shows Avalon is still actively planning, trying to put this project together. And we don't know if they've purchased the property or not. I still haven't been able to confirm that or not, but that's the first item I'd like to hear from everybody on, whether or not we should have a workshop. And then the second item is more positive. Our staff came up with a way to return some money to our residents in the form of water and sewer deposits. It's a creative action that makes a lot of sense, I believe, and was really a great thought. And I'm trying to remember, I think it was Rob Hart in finance that came up with it. Joyce, our city manager, sent us all an email that explained how that could work and the benefit it would be to maybe 8,000 customers. And so I think it's a great idea, but I want to hear your thoughts on that as well. And so with all that, Joyce, I will turn it over to you for your, we'll start with you and then just go right down the line.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the returning of the deposits, residents and commercial customers put down a deposit when they're starting a new account, and we routinely refund those back to their account after 2 years of good payment. Rob Hart, who is our utilities customer service manager, came to Kelly McGuire, the finance director, with that idea. And it was a good way to help our customers and businesses. They would be credited to their accounts. So depending on how big your water bill, it could last you for a month or up to 3 months, your credit would. So once we hear whether or not you support that idea, we would, if you were in support of that, we would bring back a resolution to allow us to do that. Secondly, the First Step Shelter, back in January, there was a discussion about withholding. We received an invoice from First Step Shelter about withholding payment until they committed to building the shelter. As I understand it, there is a contract for building not the shelter, the safe zone. There is a contract for the safe zone. So I'm seeking direction from the commission about whether or not you wish to release the payment that we've committed to the First Step Shelter.
Good deal. That can be the third.
Maybe I,
Yes, Commissioner Selby, please.
well, did you want a response now, or should we just wait until our comments to respond to each of those? I think I can add some information about the First Step Shelter, obviously being serving on the board. Maybe it'd be appropriate to add that now.
I think now would be good. Yes, sir.
Okay, so you've all read in the paper, I'm sure, that Roseanne Tornatore donated $250,000, $250,000, specifically for the construction and then operation of the safe zone. And so now that that really was a condition that we had established on our contribution to the $82,000 that we pledged in 2017, I believe it was, expecting the shelter to open the following year, is actually paid quarterly in arrears. And because we were promised a Pottinger compliant facility, and without the safe zone, the facility really is not Pottinger compliant. But now with the funds to build it, the building permit in hand, and the board at its most recent, the First Step Shelter board at its most recent board meeting, awarded the contract for the general contractor to build the safe zone. So within, I don't know, 60, 90 days, the safe zone will be, should be complete and operational.
Great. Thank you for that. And so Joyce, you just want to hear from each of us whether we are in favor of releasing those funds?
Yes, please.
Deputy Mayor Kent.
Commissioner Selby, did you say it'll take another 60 to 90 days until it's complete? And didn't we say we were going to not fund it until it was complete? Is that?
Yeah, I think we could hang on that technicality. There's some, I don't want to, some folks have questioned, why is Ormond holding up their money? Other cities, a lot of other cities put their money in back in 17 or early 18 and so forth. And honestly, I think we did the prudent thing. I don't have a problem with what we did at all. So I'm good with it. But I think now that money's in hand, the construction will begin any day if it hasn't already. I think it would be a show of good faith to make our first quarterly payment.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm fine with that then.
Good deal. Thank you. And Commissioner Persis.
Yes, the first on the Avalon, I'm having a special meeting. I'm definitely in favor of that. So you can put me as a yes. And I love the idea of refunding the deposits to some of the residents. I think right now there's some people in dire straits right here in our city. So anything we can do to help them, I'm definitely in favor of. And I appreciate the gentleman for thinking out of the box. I can't remember, I think you said his name, Mayor, or somebody did, but that was just a great idea. So a big yes on that. And I'm fine with going ahead, releasing the money to the First Step Shelter as well.
Great. Yep, it was Rob Hart in finance. Yep,
Great job. Yeah.
good deal. Commissioner Littleton.
Yes, I am fine with releasing the money to First Step Shelter.
Good deal. All right, Joyce, anything else on the First Step Shelter?
No, I have nothing else to report unless you have questions for me.
Any questions for Joyce? We'll move to, thank you, Joyce. We'll move to Assistant City Manager Claire Whitley.
Hi, good evening, Mayor. I don't have anything
evening.
else to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Any questions for Claire? In Ted McLeod style, thank you, Claire, for that report. And we'll move on to City Attorney Randy Hayes.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anything this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Any questions for Randy? Deputy Mayor Kent.
Yeah, it's a question. It's just, Randy, thank you for always protecting your city commission and the city commission from this city. And thank you for protecting this city.
Thank you.
Amen. Yeah, Randy, you've been kind of on the hot seat on some of these issues, and I don't agree with the way residents behave in their emails or in their comments. Oftentimes, it's disappointing to see that they're, understandably frustrated in certain situations, but I just wish that they would refrain from name calling. That's just, it's ridiculous in these situations. You're an excellent city attorney, one of the best in the nation, certainly in the state of Florida, well respected with a long career, and you do everything in your power to protect our city. So when I see that, I just find it obnoxious, and I wanted to thank you for all you're doing. It's not an easy situation, whether you're in administration at any level and you're trying to implement the guidelines and recommendations and basically what the law is from the president and the governor down to our county council, and explain what the law is and how the law works, and then you take a beating for it sometimes. So I'm sorry you have to put up with that. You, like you've explained to me before, that's part of the job and you understand that, but I'll just apologize, and I'm happy to explain to anybody at any time that you're one of the best that there is, and we're lucky to have you. So I'll leave it at that. Yep. Thank you. And we start tonight with Deputy Mayor Kent.
Okay. As far as the Avalon workshop, I'm glad to hear that several of you want to have this. We do need to have this, especially because of the recent events that have just happened. I can tell you all, I have had some residents calling me, and just they are frustrated with what they read in the newspaper. When they hear 20,000 residents and that dumping onto Ormond Beach, it's disgusting for our current residents to have to deal with a situation like that, and very few, if any, benefits for Ormond Beach. So the answer is yes, I want a workshop on Avalon. As far as the water and sewer deposits return, I'm a big yes for that. I've already told you where I am on the first step shelter. I want to thank all of the staff that have been working diligently during this time. And I also want to thank that small group that makes this happen right now, tonight, with all of us. They're behind the scenes and it's seamless. And from what I hear, I mean, believe it or not, I'm not one of those guys that sits around and watches other municipalities do their work on platforms like this. I'm not there, watching what's going on in other cities to see, who's making a mistake or who's doing whatever. But I did hear through the grapevine that Ormond Beach, our very first virtual meeting like this, was the best anybody around had seen. That we're not talking over each other. We raise our hands whenever we want to speak. People are muting their screens. And it's because we have a couple of real professionals at City Hall that take their job seriously. They want it to be right for the residents of Ormond Beach. And that's powerful, good stuff. So to all of you behind the scene, and City Clerk Colby, a lot of this is your team. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll listen to what everybody else has to say. Commission, stay safe. I miss seeing you all. And I hope you're able to do some fun social distancing things. I know Wyatt and Heather and I have been doing a little fishing, and it's been great. And by the way, if you like getting your line wet, now's the time. Fish are biting everywhere, and you'll leave with a little vitamin D on your skin, unless you're going for flounder at night, because the flounder at night have been biting. But you'll leave with some vitamin D on your skin and maybe a dinner in your cooler. So have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Commissioner Persis.
Well, good evening, everyone. I sure miss everybody too. I miss seeing everybody in person. It's just good to see your faces. I just want to say, as far as with the social distancing, one of the things that Carl and I have been doing is getting out and playing a little singles tennis, which has been a whole lot of fun. Enjoying the outside and getting vitamin D, like Deputy Mayor Kent said, that's very important. And I think Carl and I, as well as many of you, are probably honing your cooking skills as well. So I was never one to cook, but I sure have been cooking a lot lately. And it's really not so bad, not too bad. But I just also want to thank city staff, Colby, Salento, Jen Elston, Joyce, all of our first responders, all of you, because we all have a little part in, keeping our city going strong in spite of this, devastating disease that's going around. But I think everybody's spirits really have been up and everybody's positive, and it looks like we're going to get some great news tomorrow from the governor, and that's exciting. I also wanted to say I'm very excited to see the lighting going on the Granada Bridge. I went over today and it looks like we're going to see some different sights when we go over the bridge at night. So I'm very thrilled to see that. Yeah, it's just, I think it's all good. And I think good things are in store for all of us. And I just want to say, if we do get a K-8, if you have any of your residents say anything like, oh, it's not good for, middle school kids to be around elementary kids, please tell them that in those K-8 schools, they keep the kids separate. They don't eat lunch together. They don't have special areas together. It's totally separate. It's a total separate thing. So I just don't want that to be out there in the public. So please help with that if you can. And with that, I'll say good night to everybody. Please stay safe.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Persis. Commissioner Littleton.
Thank you, Mayor. As far as the water and sewer deposits, that's returning it to the customer. That's a great idea. Obviously, one of the smart ways the city's moving during this crisis and still thinking of ways to better serve our citizens. As far as Avalon workshop, I'm in favor of doing a workshop. I would like it to be in person, though, after the crisis, because I'm sure it's going to be interesting. And I want a workshop that's focused on our options, the city's options, and what we can do, and not sort of hearsay of what Volusia, Daytona, Avalon, and what they could do and what they might do, and what might happen, what could go here, what site plan's been approved or not been approved or could be approved. And so focused on options, that would give staff time to, they would need time to develop options. But of course, I don't want us to be so far down the line that Volusia County and Daytona Beach basically make our decisions for us. So I don't know exactly what that time frame is because things are changing so much, but that's sort of the balance I would like to see. Give us our options, all of our options, and do it before Volusia County and Daytona Beach go to Hand Avenue to wherever, or maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. Furthermore, as Commissioner Persis said with the lighting, even during this crisis, the city still moves on. The clock still ticks forward. And I appreciate staff for doing that. It's certainly behind the scenes now since no one's really out seeing everybody do it. But it's nice to know that our staff is still serving the citizens of Ormond Beach, even during this time of social distancing. With that, I'll say stay safe and good night.
Thank you, Commissioner Littleton. And we move to Commissioner Selby.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, everybody. Obviously, yes, I'm in support of the Avalon workshop. I think there's a lot of information. I like your comments, Commissioner Littleton, about what are our options. But there's also a lot of background information that I, for one, do not have. I don't know what commitments we've already made or how we've made those. And so there's a lot of information that, you know, that I need, and I assume you all need, in order to get up to speed on the land out there, whether it's Avalon or not. And the other comment I just wanted to say relative to just real estate development in general is that the last thing that a developer does is buy the land. They get the whole deal done before they ever close on the land. And the reason is if they can't get the right terms, they have more leverage for one thing, but if they can't get the terms that they want through the municipal governments and the seller, et cetera, and the other regulatory agencies, then they don't move forward with the purchase. So we're always going to be in a position where, as we talk about this site's going to get developed. If it's not Avalon, it's going to be somebody else down the road. There aren't enough vacant sites, and there's too much attraction to the area generated by Margaritaville alone to not cause another developer to come in behind. If Avalon doesn't close, somebody else will buy it. I do support the water deposit refund. That's a great idea, and thank you, Rob, for bringing that idea up. I just had a few comments tonight. You know, we really need to do everything we can to get people back to work, to get our businesses open, to get people earning a paycheck again. I think we've learned collectively that the one size fits all across America. I mean, we just heard Representative Leak tell us that Florida isn't even one size fits all. It's not even close. And America is not that way either. And while that may have been the right approach at the very beginning, it's not the right approach going forward. I think everybody kind of recognizes that now. In my opinion, it's taken a little longer than it should have. And also what's happening is, I think, is the law of unintended consequences is kicking in here. You know, the hospitals were never overwhelmed. They're at, you know, they have 40% vacancy right now. We have nurses and doctors that have been furloughed or not barely working because of the lack of elective procedures. So hopefully that'll change too. But even worse, you know, during this time of shutdown, some cancer patients skipped chemo treatments. Some parents didn't have their kids vaccinated because they didn't feel comfortable or safe taking their kids to a doctor's office. Recovery programs like for addicts, AA and NA haven't been meeting, you know, so people who desperately need help, ongoing help, haven't been able to get it. And furthermore, the death rate is dramatically from COVID-19 is I think we're going to find out is dramatically exaggerated, because what they're doing is, if you die and you have COVID, your cause of death is COVID. Whether you died from a massive heart attack or a brain aneurysm or whatever, but if you have COVID, they're putting you down on your death certificate. I know doctors who told me this, and I said, well, isn't that fraud? I mean, isn't that, but that's somebody else's risk. I think now high risk people, the people who are most at risk, they know what it takes and what they need to do in order to make sure that they're safe. But I do think that we should help in any way that we can to keep everybody as safe as possible, but especially the high risk people. Healthy people are suffering. They can't pay their mortgage. They don't even have money to buy groceries. And thank goodness that we put money into the food banks at our last our first special meeting. But they are extremely busy, some reporting as much as 3 times the traffic that they've had before. And the financial help that was promised everybody is not anywhere near as easy to get as a lot of people thought it was going to be. The PPP program, the payroll protection program, of course, it ran out of money almost immediately. They've done a second wave of it, but honestly, in my opinion, it's not nearly enough. The Florida unemployment website, as Representative Leak told us, it can't anywhere near handle the demand. So there's a whole lot of people who need to just get registered for unemployment who haven't even been able to do that yet. The 1099 workers, anybody who's a gig worker or a real estate agent, people who are not 941 employees with payroll taxes taken out, they're pretty much left holding the bag. They can apply for the EIDL loan, which will likely end up as a grant, but I suspect that they might only be able to get about $1,000. So, and just kind of looking forward, the federal government has or will spend at least $3 to $4 trillion addressing this COVID-19. That's 15 to 20% of the current national debt. In addition to the $1 trillion that we have as a deficit just from operating the government every year. So our national debt now exceeds our gross domestic product. It's 101%. We owe more than the sum of all the goods and services that the entire nation, not this year, but in last year, produced last year. Okay, we owe more. The government owes more than that, and it's not the government; it's us. We owe that. That would be if you had a company that was doing that, you'd be in default. You would be bankrupt. You can't owe more than, you can't have more debt than what you generate in revenue. So they say, so lots of bad stuff is happening, but there's also a lot of good things. They say all politics is local. So now is our time to shine. And some of the really great ideas that I think, we talked about a couple of them tonight, but I really like the banner policy with Main Street. And I took a picture and I posted it on Facebook. And thank you to SR Parat for helping Main Street to get those banners made. The curbside pickup, for those of you who've been on East Granada in front of Bon Gourmet and the Wild Rabbit Bistro, they have a 5-minute parking. I don't know if the city participated in helping get that set up, but it kind of looks like a city sign. And if the city did, it was a fantastic idea. I love it. The city signs on the bridge that, encourage exercising, but also staying apart, stay apart, exercise smart. Those are all great things. There's a few things that I think, suggestions that maybe could make it better. We heard from Homeland Security, I think it was on Friday, a study that they did that heat and moisture kills the virus. And of course, we know that salt is a really good disinfectant. And it's blown my mind all along that that we're closing the beach, that we ever closed the beach, and that we're restricting access to the beach, so forth. I would really encourage us to do everything we can to get the parking open. I mean, we now recognize that going to the beach is a good thing, vitamin D, exercise. People need it just not only for their physical well-being, but also for their mental well-being. So, whatever we can do. I know the county helped pay for Andy Romano and we got the parking totally closed off, but maybe we could go back to at least half of the parking spaces open. Also I would like to see us, hopefully the governor will classify a self-service car wash as an essential business or as a business that there's no risk. Because while I understand what transpired with Sparkle and Shine, it's very unfortunate. And it really, it just defies common sense. And we were put in a very, we meaning, you know, the city was put in a very uncomfortable position. But I sure hope they can take that sign down really quick and they can start serving customers again. And I just got to say that I was never a fan of those big lights on the bridge, on the Granada Bridge. And I was honestly shocked that they were putting them back up. I was hoping that they weren't going to put them back up. I think it's a total waste of money. We've proven for the last year and a half, 2 years that we don't need them. The bridge is plenty well lit without them. And they're going to be ugly because we didn't want to put any extra money in to get them good looking, which I support. I didn't want us to put any money in. That money could be that they're using to put those lights back up could be used to fast track the crosswalks that we need on A1A to increase pedestrian safety. And that money could be better spent there. And I guess with that, I'll just make one final comment, actually two final comments. One is that I had a resident reach out to me who has a house on the river. And I just want to, his counsel is going to be working with staff on this, but apparently I was always under the impression that if you build a new house on the river or you make an addition to it, that the factor is the houses that adjoin you, you know, to the right and to the left, that you can't block their view, but you can go even with the back of their houses. But apparently that's not how our code works. Our code, apparently the way it works is there's a distance you have to set back from the shoreline. And so if the shoreline meanders, your neighbors could actually be way further out than you could be. And so to get even with your neighbors, you know, where the back of your house is even with your neighbors, you got to go for a variance. And part of that process apparently generally involves getting your neighbors to sign off on that. Well, some neighbors, you know, aren't necessarily cooperative. They don't, you know, they'd like to have your house further away from the water so that their view remains unrestricted. And of course, after you go to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, if you don't like the decision of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals for your variance, the only recourse is it's not the City Commission, it's Circuit Court. And obviously it's highly unlikely that a Circuit Court judge would reverse the decision of the Board of Adjustments and Appeal. So that's something I think maybe we might have the opportunity, hopefully we'll have the opportunity to look at maybe a little different way of determining how deep a home can be on a lot. And the final comment I have to say is I have filed my paperwork to run for re-election. And I'm hopeful that I'll be able to continue to serve the residents of Ormond Beach for another term. And with that, I'll say good night.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Selby, and appreciate all the commission's comments. You guys look great. It's 8:40. I think our meetings are actually running a little longer virtually than they do in real life, but appreciate each of you and the work that you're doing. I know it's not easy during this time, but each of you look well, and from what I hear, you continue to do well. We're lucky to have great staff support, and that always helps. I know we're anxious and we're looking forward towards pivoting towards implementing the rollout of how we're going to reopen. I think we're going to get more guidance, like Representative Leake said, tomorrow from the governor, and I too hope that includes tennis, because I've heard from other people they're anxious to get back to playing tennis. Full use of our parks, the county parks and the state parks. And, you know, I think because we've done such a great job at flattening the curve, providing that hospital capacity for our seniors and those who are a little less healthy maybe than the rest of us, I think we've done a fantastic job with that, and we can be proud of that. And now it is time to reopen in a methodical, smart way. And that's what I expect from Governor DeSantis, and look forward to our staff rolling that out. So excited about that. Commissioner Persis, you mentioned the K-8 school, and they do keep those kids separated. Everybody I've ever talked to has loved the K-8 concept. It creates almost a magnet school with some very special programming. And my understanding in talking to parents, they love the idea of their kids being at the same school for 8 or 9 years and not having to drop them and run all over town to make sure each kid gets to the right school at the right time. So even though initially they may not have talked about a K-8 years ago, they may have been discussing just a replacement elementary for elementary. I think when people stop and think about the benefits of a K-8 concept, they're going to be very happy with that. And so I look forward to seeing what happens with that. I want to thank our staff again. I know each of you has done that, our first responders, our healthcare and other essential workers for helping us through this difficult, unprecedented time. And I think, the only other thing I was going to point out, Commissioner Littleton, you talked about the lighting on the bridge. That's the state Department of Transportation. And I only pointed out because somebody complained in an email that, why do you have city workers out there, as if we're putting them at risk or something of that nature. And we haven't had city workers out there. The state of Florida, taking advantage of the much lighter traffic, is trying to finish projects and get them completed. And we're just lucky that they're finally getting this project completed. I've had so many people ask me about when are the lights going to be replaced. And so it's going to make a difference. When you go over that bridge, you're going to notice it. And so that should be done. That should be done soon. With that, I will say good night. We'll adjourn for now. Stay safe, stay well, and I look forward to seeing y'all in person, hopefully at the next meeting in May. So we'll be in touch. Good night.